Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated as we will now prepare for the official wreath laying at the Freedom Wall in honour of those who served and sacrificed during World War II. Today, particularly, we remember the more than 2 million Allied service members who took part in Operation Overlord and the more than 225,000 Allies who were killed, wounded or missing.
Now presenting the wreath for the United States of America is the Maritime Administrator, Mr. Mark Busby, and Mr. Charles Sumner, Jr., Principal Deputy Assistant to the Secretary of Defense. Along with them will be Mr. Alex Kershaw, Mr. Herman Zychek, Mr. James Elsner Brennan, Mrs. Barbara George, daughter of Captain Malcolm George, who died on June 7, 1944, after landing with the invasion of D-Day. The next wreath is from Australia. It's presented by Wing Commander Matthew Stuckless, Assistant Air Attaché, Embassy of Australia. He is accompanied by World War II veterans, Mr. Dick Bailey and Mr. George Richard Peterson. Presenting the wreath for Belgium is Captain Gregory Delbert, Transportation Officer, Embassy of Belgium. He's accompanied by World War II veteran Mr. Donald McKee. Presenting the wreath for Canada is Mr. Christopher Gibbons, Political Minister, Counselor, and Captain Christian Monahan, Royal Canadian Navy, Embassy of Canada. They are accompanied by World War II veteran Mr. Irvin Powell. Accompanying the wreath for the Czech Republic is Brigadier General Jan Buras, Defense Military and Air Attaché, Embassy of Czech Republic. Accompanying him are World War II veterans, Mr. Larry Thorpe, Mr. Charles Lawrence Wheeler, and Mr. Jose Baldonado. Presenting the wreath for Denmark is Lieutenant Colonel William Kruger Clausen, Assistant Defense Military, Naval, and Air Attaché, Royal Danish Embassy. He's accompanied by World War II veterans Corporal David Woolman, Mr. Stan Walsh, and Mr. Adeladio Ortega. Representing the wreath for France, Air Force Colonel Oliver Kalajian, Deputy Defense Attaché, Embassy of France. He's accompanied by World War II veterans Mr. Wilbur Williams and Mr. Biladio Lee. Representing the country of Greece is Captain Charlamopoulos Pilididis, Naval Attaché, Embassy of Greece. He is accompanied by World War II veterans, Mr. Francis Ken Oakes and Mr. Bill Spurrier. Representing the country of Luxembourg is Ambassador Sylvie Lucas, Embassy of Luxembourg. Accompanying her is Mr. Eli Liddon, World War II veteran. We offer our condolences on the recent passing of the Grand Duke, Jean of Luxembourg, who was a decorated World War II veteran who landed on the beaches of Normandy on June 11, 1944. Representing the Netherlands is Colonel Paul Everding, Army Attaché, and Lieutenant Colonel Sef van de Ville, Embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. They are accompanied by World War II veteran Mr. Jonathan Rossman. Representing the country of New Zealand is Commodore David Gibbs, Defense Attaché, Embassy of New Zealand. He is accompanied by World War II veterans Colonel Warren Halstead and Mr. Lawrence Telemati. Representing the country of Norway is Colonel Magni Roda, Military Attaché, Royal Norwegian Embassy. He's accompanied by Mr. Dennis Firk and Mr. Lou Perron. Representing the Republic of Poland is Judge William Webster, Mr. Alfred Henry Bay, and Mr. Felipe Hera. Representing the country of Slovakia, Chaplain Commander Gary Thornton, Jr., United States Navy, Mr. Ellis Williamson, Mr. John F. Nagel II, and Mr. James Morgan Keel, all World War II veterans. Representing the United Kingdom is Commodore Andrew Benton, Royal Navy, British Embassy, Mr. Anthony H. Grant, World War II veteran, Mr. Thomas Frederick Kissinger, World War II veteran, and Ms. Evelyn Berquist, student, Stock STEM Middle School, Magnet. Representing the National Park Service is Mr. Jeffrey Reinbold, Acting Superintendent, National Mall and Memorial Parks. Paige Padilla, student, Stock STEM Middle School, Magnet. World War II veterans, Mr. Helmut Fred Bohem, Miss Patsy Louise Del Vecchio. And our last wreath is presented by Friends of the National World War II Memorial. Mr. Josh Bunning III, Chairman, Friends of the National World War II Memorial. Colonel Andrei Obernevich, Embassy of Ukraine. Mackenzie Zinn, student, Stock STEM Middle School, Magnet. And Mr. Robert Levine, World War II veteran, POW. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, please rise and render appropriate honors for the playing of taps. You may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time we honor all branches of our armed forces with the playing of the Armed Forces Service songs. If you are serving or have served in one of the branches of service, please rise to be recognized when your service song is being played. And now, performed by the United States Army Band Pershing, the Armed Forces Medley. United States Merchant Marines. United States Coast Guard. United States Air Force. United States Navy. United States Marine Corps.